2 Timothy chapter 2, and I'll start. Verse 1 says, "You then, my son, be strong in the favor that is in Mashiach." Be strong in the favor that is in Mashiach, Yahushua. "And what you have heard from me among many witnesses, entrust these to trustworthy men who shall be competent to teach others as well." Very important. Well, first, it's interesting how, well, we know that through Mashiach, we receive the favor. That means the forgiveness of sins, and therefore the Almighty being pretty much happy with us so that he will listen to our prayers and act according to his perfect will for us as we ask for it, right? Of course. So this is what in Christianity they call grace, right? And there's a doctrine in which they believe that they are saved by grace, and therefore they don't have to do works, not understanding what scripture says about all of that. For instance, that faith without works is dead. So even though we do have the favor, we need to remain strong, pretty much to keep that favor. We need to remain firm. While in those doctrines that I mentioned, they believe that because of the favor, they can just relax and not think about the strength they need for trials, tribulations, for tests, etc. So even though we are in the favor, we need to be strong. And as we know, we can do all things through Mashiach, who strengthens us. So you then, my son, be strong in the favor that is in Mashiach, Yahushua. So Shaul, Paulus, who represents the witness like Moshe, speaking to טימתאוס, who represents the witness Eliyahu, so his spiritual son. Then he says, "And what you have heard from me among many witnesses, entrust these to trustworthy men who shall be competent to teach others as well." Nowadays, the way they normally do this in churches, most churches, Christian churches, is that they need a title in theology. So it's not about being competent. It's about who paid for the classes and took the whole course, right? The whole well, yeah, they finished the major in whatever they are told that they have to have as a title in order to teach. So it's not about being competent, but about having gone through those studies or schools. And not only that, sadly, what they teach in those schools is not what Paul taught. Many times they may read the teachings of Paul, but as Peter said, many people do not understand them because they are hard to understand. We need the Ruach HaKodesh. So it's not about a university and all of that. Is about the Ruach and being competent according to what Yahweh has placed in each and every one of us as a ministry. So first of all, we need to know what is it that he taught, right? That Tīmotאוס heard. And then, well, as he says, among many witnesses. So to us, pretty much means what was written by Paul, right? To Tīmotאוס, he actually was there and heard the teaching. So that's why it was being said to him like that. But also because he represents the two witnesses, and the witness like Moshe teaches the doctrine to the witness Eliyahu. So he hears him, and that is what he needs to teach as well. Also, the 144,000 pretty much will receive the same teaching, and each of them they have a ministry, and that means they will be competent to teach others, pretty much the many. The problem is that they won't hear. So entrust these to trustworthy men, very important as well, because many times this is not accounted either when they hire somebody to teach in a church or whatever. I repeat, they only think about the title in theology or where he comes from or who was his pastor, but they don't know about trustworthiness. They don't know what is it that Paul really taught, because starting with the fact that I just mentioned, the grace, as they call it, that is a teaching that they claim comes from Paul, but it is a misinterpreted. So they claim they teach Paul, but they don't really. So entrust these to trustworthy men who shall be competent to teach others as well. Suffer hardship with us as a good soldier of Yahushua HaMashiach. Another important verse that we shouldn't forget, and sadly, because of a lot of the doctrines in Christianity as well, for instance, that of the rapture, many people expect not to go through any hardship or suffer anything. So when they do, they pretty doubt their faith. They doubt the Almighty. They complain. They reject what they have received because they actually didn't understand it, or they received a false doctrine, of course. So suffer hardship with us as a good soldier of Yahushua HaMashiach. We are at a war, spiritual war, so we are soldiers. And that means that sometimes things are going to get hard. So we must be willing to suffer hardship, because we know that at the end, there will be a reward. That's right, Omar. So suffer hardship with us as a good soldier of Yahushua HaMashiach. No one serving as a soldier gets involved in the affairs of this life. This analogy, right? Because we are in a spiritual war. And so we compare it to a physical war. And we see, as it says here, no one serving as a soldier gets involved in the affairs of this life, right? They are focused on the war, on learning how to defend their country or their people, right? That's what it should be, or supposed to be. So, suffer hardship with us as a good soldier of Yahushua HaMashiach. No one serving as a soldier gets involved in the affairs of this life. So, like I said, the soldier is focused, or should be focused, because nowadays things are very different than what they were or how they should be. In the sense that there's no more, well, how could I say it? Because there are few people who actually are soldiers for the right reasons. A lot of people, if there are right reasons nowadays to be a soldier in a physical war, right? Because even that's sad. A person may have want to defend the country, but they don't know that their leaders are making them fight wars just for money or for other things that have nothing to do with honor, right? Or actually freedom. So it's very sad that even in that case, when a soldier has a good motivation, he's used by those in power, right? Having authority. So it's very different than the honor that they used to have. And also I say that because there are people who get involved or recruited mainly because they just want to make sure that the government will pay for their university, right, or college, that they will have some money, that they will have a house, and so they are doing it really to get something back, and therefore they are actually doing it to get involved in the affairs of this life, right? So it's a little bit different than what I'm about to say, right? Because if you are ready to go to war, you need to prepare to go and die, pretty much, if is what Yahweh has in store, right? So that means you shouldn't be thinking about what am I going to do after the war, or thinking about, for instance, even remember that in scriptures we see that if and there was a war, that person was allowed to go back home and to enjoy his wife, and then he could, after some time, get into the army again. So that has to do with involving yourself in the affairs of this life, even that, which is very important, of course, and having children because of what we see in Genesis. But my point is comparing this to what also what Paul said in Corinthians and other books regarding marriage, right? And if a person has come to Mashiach, pretty much has become a soldier while being single, he should remain that way. So it's pretty much like saying here not to get involved in the affairs of this life, because now you are about to get involved in the affairs of the next life, right? So you know, or one should know what he or she is getting into. No one serving as a soldier gets involved in the affairs of this life. Obviously, we are in this world, so we do need to do certain things that are part of this world. For instance, even when it comes to the body, remember how I have explained that the inclination to evil that is in the heart has to do with the soul of the flesh, and therefore is the one that has to do with hunger. So we need to eat, and therefore we have to take time for the body to eat. And well, thankfully, thanks to the Father, we can enjoy eating, and that's why some people go to the extreme and end up sinning through it, right? So we need to be aware of it, and therefore eat what we need in order to have the energy to do the commandments, to do what we need to do, get involved in the affairs of the next life. So to do that, we do need to also know what to do in this life, which is eat right, sleep also right, and other things that we need to do in order to do the spiritual, like to have strength to go and do the commandment. My point is that it doesn't mean that if you have a job that has to do with things of this world, you are not doing this, because that is part of it. And like I always say, if you have whatever job you may have, what you need to do is bring the Ruach with you to that place, to those people you are around, so that you become an example, a light for them to see the way. So by doing that, you're actually getting involved in the next life, even though you're doing it in the middle of a place where everybody is involved in this life. I hope that's being understood, or it makes sense, right? So no one serving as a soldier gets involved in the affairs of this life. So do we have to do things like work, sleep, everything, like from taking a shower to all those things that have to do with the routine of having a body in a world that is temporal. So everything has to be repeated because it's temporal. So it's part of this world, but we need to do it right and in the correct way. Like I said, eating, sleeping, for instance, in order to be able to do what we were sent to do in this world. So it's about keeping a balance. So no one serving as a soldier gets involved in the affairs of this life. The affairs of this life shouldn't be our focus, our priority. It says, in order to please only him who enlisted him as a soldier. So the soldier wants to please the one who enlisted him, just like we want to please Yahweh and Yahushua, right? So we are focused on what he wants, what he's asking from us. And in fact, remember that and I'm repeating or saying all of this because I can see how some people could misinterpret this and say, okay, so I'm not going to work. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to read the scriptures, thinking that that's what it's saying. And remember also that even just reading the scriptures is not the point, because you need to also practice what the scriptures say. So to do that, you need to live life. And therefore, we need to understand this next to everything else that is in scriptures. And remember that Paul himself, in the previous letter to Tīmotēus, actually explained how everybody should live if one is a servant, right, or an employee. Of course, it was written as a slave, but it's all quite similar. So it was talking about if you work for somebody who is an evil boss, not with those words, but pretty much, you need to do everything as if you were working for the Most High, right? So remember that the same Paul who is telling us, you keep doing your job, work. He who doesn't work doesn't eat, etc., is the one now saying not to get involved in this life. So it's not referring to those little things that a lot of people would think about in order not to do them. It's talking about just the way people of the world think. They only think about this reality, about multiplying their riches, about having more houses, about just partying, etc. And I repeat, that shouldn't be our mindset, because now we are soldiers. We are fighting a war. So we must please the one who enlisted us. And if anyone competes in a game, right, because although, well, it's interesting, once again, like I always say, there are two perspectives, right, from heaven and from earth. The one from earth is kind of negative. The one from heaven is always positive. So depends on how you see it, like from the point of view of the flesh or the spirit. In this case, I say that because when we think about what is in play or at stake in this reality, is pretty much everything, is existence itself, to be or not to be. So it is huge. It is super important. So in that case, it's not a game, right? It's the most serious thing ever. But from the spiritual perspective, in which Yahweh paid for everything, he paid for our sins, he's given us everything, he gives us the strength to be able to deal with everything. So at the end, from the perspective of heaven, is like a game, because we need to beat the system, right? Which is fighting against us, that of the enemy, I mean, the mighty one of this world. So we need to also see, well, in a way we could see, and actually there's some mythology about this that I'm about to say, because of what it represents. See this world as a labyrinth or a maze, right? And we need to come out of it. And Yahushua is the way. It's only one way. The other ones seem to be a way, but they are confusing. That they are from Babel. They get stuck at the end. So we need to come out of this reality through Mashiach. And that's pretty much like a game or a competition, right? And we need to fight to get the best reward we can. So, and if anyone competes in a game, he is not crowned unless he competes according to the rules. And if anyone competes in a game, he is not crowned unless he competes according to the rules. Very important. So Yahweh gave us the rules in the scriptures. That is the Torah. He gave us the rules to the game, how to come out, how to beat it. There is I have mentioned this several times before. I forgot what was the name of it. Oh yeah, there's a show called Westworld, right? I have told you about this, Westworld. And mainly the first season. Yeah, mainly the first season is filled with I don't know if I should call it subliminal messages or what, but it is filled with messages and symbology. I don't know, like I have said before, if the writers did it knowingly. Maybe they read a lot of scriptures in the Gnostic books, or it was a spirit that worked through them and made a story in which they use many symbols from the scriptures. And sorry, so the show, if you guys want to see it at some point, like it has a representation of Adam and Eve, a representation of Samael, Halel, and Azazel, has a representation of this world and the world of the angels, and a bunch of other things. And it's crazy how everything connects with the stories that we see in scriptures and the Gnostic books. And I say all of that because in the show, they make the place that represents this world like a game. And at the end, there was a guy that was trying to beat the game, and to do that, he needed to find a maze. And the map to the maze was written inside the skin of the head of well, I'm just giving too many details of the show, but the I guess I have to give the details as well. So they made certain robots that were just like humans. They looked just like humans, but they were not humans. Those robots actually represent the humans, and the humans in the show represent the angels. So when this man, who's actually then an angel who represents Azazel, wants to come to the world and beat the game that represents when he fell to the world, and finds that the way to find the maze is hidden within, like I said, the head of the robots. So he goes around like cutting heads, trying to find the map until he finds it. And the map has is a drawing that pretty much represents the brain. So it's kind of like saying that to find the way out, you need to go in, right, into your own mind and find the way. So it's very deep and very crazy how this first season, I repeat, pretty much shows a lot of what is going on in this world. Now, I also need to say, in a very raw and sometimes not at all positive or even set apart way. So there are certain things in the show that one should close the eyes and the ears or fast forward. Yeah, exactly. So now going back to this, I remember that show because of this. And if anyone competes in a game, he is not crowned unless he competes according to the rules. So we have the scriptures. Those are the rules. The only way to be crowned at the end is to fulfill the Torah through Yahushua, who is the one who already did it. So we do it through him. We need to be connected to him, be one body with him. So anyone who competes in a game is not crowned, right? He doesn't receive the trophy unless he competes according to the rules. There are a lot of people nowadays who are cheating, trying to cheat with false doctrines, like saved by grace. That's wanting to cheat. That's like, yeah, I don't have to do the works. I'll just be saved because I believe. What do you believe? I don't know, but I believe, right? So others, like the Jewish, they are trying to be crowned without believing in Mashiach. So that's breaking the rules because they think they can fulfill all the Torah, which in the same rule book says is impossible. So the same rule book is telling us that the only way is Mashiach, because he is the only one who did all the rules. So now we can do that through him, because we receive his spirit, which already did it and knows how to. So, and if anyone competes in the game, he's not crowned unless he competes according to the rules. The hard-working farmer ought to be first to receive his share of the crops. The hard-working farmer ought to be first to receive his share of the crops, right? So remember also that scripture says that Yahushua said, one is the one who sows and the other one, another one who reaps. So the last comes to get the harvest. The wheat are the chosen few, the grapes are the many. And also, obviously, this verse not only refers to the last who comes to get the harvest, but to each and every person who will receive a harvest for their own works in this reality. Because we came to the earth as farmers in a spiritual sense, which is actually the job that Yahweh gave Adam when he put him in the garden, right? So it's not to get physical fruits that we can eat, but spiritual fruits that he can eat, right? In the spiritual sense, that he can enjoy. Because if in this reality, as Shlomo said, the only thing that we can enjoy is eating and drinking the fruits of our labor, that means that the purpose for this reality is for fruits to come out as the labor of the Most High during the 6 millenniums, right? Just like during 6 days he created everything, he worked. Now during 6 millenniums, for 1 day is like 1,000 years, he worked to get fruit from the earth, and those fruits will be men. And the fruits that each man will receive are his deeds in this reality. That will be his reward. So the hardworking farmer ought to be first to receive his share of the crops. That's why the chosen few are harvested first. Just like we should get the 10% first and give it to the Most High, right? Because that is in the sense of the most important thing. He's the one who gave everything. So we give back. Think over what I say, for the sovereign shall give you understanding into all this. Think over what I say. Very important. A lot of people expect to understand without thinking it over. And that's not how it works. Like I always say, sadly, when it comes to things of this world, like you said here, for instance, affairs of this life, they actually get focused on it, and they study and repeat and study and go through school and everything else that has to do with affairs of this life. But when it comes to the affairs of the next life, they expect everything to be easy. And that's why the doctrine of saved by grace is so famous and loved by many, or similar doctrines, because there are a lot that go around the same doctrine. So think over what I say. We need to really think deeply everything that is written in scriptures. Think over what I say, for the sovereign shall give you understanding into all this. So if you don't understand it, just think it over until you do, knowing that the Messiah will give you understanding. And if you're not getting it, pray more and believe more. Remember that Yahushua HaMashiach of the seed of David was raised from the dead according to my good news. This is wonderful for a couple reasons. I'm sure more, but remember that Yahushua HaMashiach of the seed of David. So Paulus reminds us or confirms that Yahushua came from the seed of David, right? The king of Yehudah, as we see also in the book of Matthew and the book of Luke, to the genealogy of Mashiach. Remember that Yahushua HaMashiach of the seed of David was raised from the dead according to my good news. See how Well, just a second. Also, how it says seed, and it doesn't say the branch. And I was talking about the seed of David, I know, but it doesn't mention branch or tree or fruit. It mentions seed because Yahushua is the seed and he became the root, as he explains, the root of David. So the seed of David became the root. And then from that root came the tree, from which came the branch, that being the last, and the 144,000, the fruits. Then he says, was raised from the dead according to my good news. He doesn't say according to the good news or according to his good news, but he says according to my good news. So he's pretty much saying according to the way I explained it, according to the way I understood it through the Ruach HaKodesh, so that he could write it down for everybody. But that shows how Paul represents the second manifestation of Mashiach. Because first came Yahushua HaMashiach, the seed, to become the root, to be raised from the dead, so that the last can come according to his good news, or teaching the good news that Yahweh gives him. Now, also remember that good news is Besorot in Hebrew, which can be also translated as flesh, basar, right? Like Mashiach gave his flesh for us so that we could have the good news. So, was raised from the dead according to my flesh. So in a way we could see that, remember how Paul says, to die is gain, right? But to live is Mashiach. So while we are alive and accept Mashiach, we died to what we were, and now Mashiach lives in us. So, as it says here, was raised from the dead according to my good news, like also we could see this as the Ruach of Mashiach entering Paul, or in this case, the last, to bring the teaching. According to my good news, for which I suffer hardship. Now, if Paul was, as many claim, an infiltrator, there are people in the Christian world who think he was an infiltrator from the Jewish world to destroy the true doctrine. Others believe, in the Jewish world, they believe that Paul was, well, some don't even believe that he existed. Some believe that he tried to destroy Judaism. So there are people from both sides who do not believe in Paul and what he wrote. But everything that he wrote is completely true. It makes sense in every way when you put it next to the Torah. And when it comes to the new covenant, if you don't believe Paul, then the whole new covenant must be thrown out the window. Because of the way everything is connected, Paul is key. So also, why would Paul be willing to suffer hardship in this world? In fact, he himself is saying he doesn't get involved in the affairs of this life. So why would he suffer hardship for just wanting to, as they say, to infiltrate and destroy the doctrine? And I say that in the sense that, remember how many believe that Mashiach didn't resurrect, but just the fact, and there are many other facts that confirm that he did it, that Yahweh raised him from the dead. But one that is very important is the fact that the disciples left him. When he got caught, they left him. Peter, who had told him that he was willing to die for him, denied him in fear of getting caught with him. So, as we know, Judas gave him to the Pharisees. He sold them out. And then when he resurrects, he goes to the disciples. And after that, they are all willing to die. And now they actually do so, and in a similar way. So that shows that something happened that changed their minds and their hearts. They knew that everything was true regarding eternal life. They knew that everything was true regarding what Mashiach said because of everything he did and the fact that he resurrected. More the fact that he resurrected, because that's when they actually changed. They had seen him resurrect the dead. They had seen him give sight to the blind and everything else that he did, but they still denied him. They still went away. But when they saw him resurrected, now they were willing to die, and they did so. So that shows that they knew. They didn't believe something, they knew. So they were willing to go through hardship. So the same thing goes for Paul. He went through a lot of hardship for what he taught. There is no way that if he was focused in this life, in this world, in trying to destroy a doctrine, in just being sent by a leader to destroy, as they would say, Christianity, or by his own will to destroy Judaism, why would he go through so much hardship? He would have stopped long before, being in jail so many times, in chains, and everything else that he mentions. So if he suffered hardship, is because he knows what he was teaching is true, and he was willing to die for it. And he was willing to suffer because he also made other people suffer for their belief before he converted. For which I suffer hardship as a criminal unto chains, but the word of Elohim is not chained. That's beautiful. For several reasons. Well, also remember that the two witnesses will be put in jail, so they will be treated and presented to the world as criminals. A lot of people will think they are criminals. Just that will make them not even think a little bit about what they will say. Sadly, most people believe the news, they believe the media, right? They will listen to whatever they are told in TV, and they will believe it, because the TV also became as a god to society, sadly. So, as it says, for which I suffer hardship as a criminal unto chains. So a lot of people, just because of that, will reject. And I find it interesting that there are so many people who claim to believe in Paul, in Catholicism, right? They make him a saint and all of that. But most of those people who see him as a saint, who claim to believe in him, who read the scriptures, if a person came out of jail teaching the scriptures, just because of the fact that they came out of jail, most of them wouldn't listen. Most of them would reject, would see with a bad eye or attitude. So that's something that everybody should keep in mind, not to judge through appearances or through other things, like in this case, having been in chains or having been called a criminal. We need to be able to judge with true judgment, as Mashiach told us, righteous judgment. So, for which I suffer hardship as a criminal unto chains, but the word of Yahweh is not chained. Thankfully, he is not. He is sitting at the right hand of the Father with all authority. He couldn't be chained to death, to Sheol. He was released from the chains of death because he fulfilled the entire Torah. So I endure through it all for the sake of the chosen. So I endure through it all for the sake of the chosen. You see how this is like the witness, like Moshe speaking, right? When he goes to jail for 10 days before dying, as if he was saying, so I endure through it all for the sake of the chosen, right? The chosen few, the 144,000. so that they too obtain deliverance, which is in Mashiach Yahushua with everlasting esteem. Right? So we see here a representation of what the witness like Moshe will go through in order for the chosen few to be able to enter eternity without experiencing death. It says, trustworthy is the word. Trustworthy is the word. For if we died with him, we shall also live with him. It's powerful. Trustworthy is the word. This that he is about to say. We can trust this completely, just like we can trust the word of Yahweh. What is the word of Yahweh? The name of the Messiah, Revelation 19:13, and that is Yahushua, which means Yahweh saves. So if we died with him, right, because if we accept him as sovereign, as the head, then when he died, we died. And therefore, when he resurrected, we resurrected. We shall also live with him. So if we accepted his death, then he shall give us his life. If we endure, we shall also reign with him, right? He who endures till the end shall be saved, says the scripture. He who endures till the end shall be saved. And those who are saved are the ones who will reign with him. So if we endure, we shall also reign with him. If we deny him, he also shall deny us. That is huge as well, because a lot of people think that, no, even if they deny him, they will still enter heaven because to them, God loves everybody. And at the end, there's no point to life but their pleasure. So if we deny him, he also shall deny us. It's that simple. Those who deny the creator will be denied when the next creation begins. They will be denied entry. They will be sent to the lake of fire. If we are not trustworthy, I love this. If we are not trustworthy, he remains trustworthy. So if we deny him, he also denies us. But if we are not trustworthy, he remains trustworthy. For it is impossible for him to deny himself. This is super powerful for many reasons as well. So I'll go little by little. If we are trustworthy, he remains trustworthy, right? If we deny him, he denies us. That's what it is. We cannot be neutral. Either we are with him or against him, as he said it himself. But if we are not trustworthy, we claim that we love him, but we are not trustworthy. We claim that we believe in him, but we are not trustworthy. He remains trustworthy because he cannot deny himself. He is trustworthy by nature, if we could use that word. That's him. That's trustworthiness. He is trustworthiness. So even if we, by being led by the flesh, by the inclination to do evil in the heart, if we, because of that, are not trustworthy, that doesn't mean that he won't remain trustworthy toward us. He will, because that is him. He is trustworthiness. So he remains trustworthy. It is impossible for him to deny himself. So, this is interesting also. Well, there are several things I want to say here, but I'll just say this one since I just saw it. Remember that Yahweh says, I am the first and I am the last. Yahushua came and he said, I do not give testimony of myself because that would be empty. I give testimony of the Father, and the Father gives testimony of the Son. So Yahushua came to give testimony of Yahweh, and now Yahweh will manifest as the last to give testimony of Yahushua the Son. Because it is impossible for him to deny himself. If we deny him, he also shall deny us. But when he manifests as the last, it will be impossible for him to deny himself. He will have to accept Mashiach because it is himself. So the last comes and believes in the first, Yahushua, because it is impossible for him to deny himself, as we are seeing here in this previous verse. But also another thing, remember what I was talking about, the two perspectives? We know that that Yahweh is almighty. He can do all things. He created everything. But in this reality, there is darkness, which came as a result of Yahweh contracting his light. So the absence of light brings darkness. The absence of heat brings cold, etc., etc. So my point with that is that if we were to take darkness, evil, and all of that as something real, which is not, in the perspective of the heavens, is a creation, so it's an illusion that will disappear. Everything that is good in this reality comes from the Father, so it is actually eternal. So that is what is actually real, that which is good. Hope that's understood. Because in that sense, Yahweh is almighty because he does all things. But we cannot say that Yahweh does evil, even though he created it by contracting himself in order for free will to exist. So his point was to create free will. So there was a need for evil. But the evil came from its root, which is the emptiness, or tohu vabohu, right, that we see in Genesis, the darkness from which Samael came. So I'm saying all of this because, for instance, those who believe in Lucifer, they call him almighty. They think he is almighty, and that the almighty and that Yahweh is not. And their view is that Lucifer is able to do good and evil, yet Yahweh cannot do evil. So they say that Lucifer is almighty, but they don't understand that doing evil is not might. So is that understood? Yahweh is the only one who can do all things. The enemy, since he is part of this, of a lower reality than the third heaven, he received a part from his father Samael and a light from Yahweh. So he was supposed to do right, but he ended up doing evil. So those who worship him think he's almighty, not understanding that by him becoming evil, he left anything that he did good, or whatever he did good became evil once he turned wicked. And therefore, everything is just an illusion, just like whatever they are and they have and they think they will receive. So I say all of that because we see it here. It is impossible for him to deny himself, but Paul said it in a perfect way. Deny himself because he is trustworthiness, so he cannot be the opposite. He is trustworthiness. He would deny himself if he was not trustworthy. That only exists within humanity, who have free will and ate the fruit of good and evil, and therefore have an inclination in the heart to do evil. And therefore some do and are not trustworthy. So it is impossible for him to deny himself. My point in all of this is that it says that it is impossible for him. It is impossible for him. And some would say, oh, so there are things that are impossible for him. You see? But those things that are impossible for him is to be evil, is to be not trustworthy. So he cannot be wicked. He cannot be unfaithful. He cannot be anything that is vain, an illusion, anything that will disappear, because all of that is temporal and he's eternal. So he will remain trustworthy even if humans don't. And imagine, like I was saying, how far away you have to be from the Father and Mashiach, the truth, to use something like that as to think that he is not mighty, or that he is limited. Because if not to do evil is a limitation, I would love to have that limitation. I try to get it every day, right? The sense of not having the inclination to do evil, I mean. But those who are wicked see the inclination to do evil as an advantage, because it tells them what to do, how to do it, when to do it, to receive the pleasures that they are seeking in the flesh. So anyways, remind them of this, earnestly witnessing before the sovereign, not to wage verbal battles, which is useless to the overthrowing of the hearers. So remind them of this. This is something that I have had to remind several people many times in the past, and you guys have heard some of those. Because I understand. I kind of went through it as well. When we come to understand the truth regarding the names, the false doctrines, and all of that, we want to go and tell everybody. And when we want to go and tell everybody, we find people who do not want to know nor care about it. And when we enter those verbal battles, then the flesh gets in the way, and the flesh wants you to beat the other person with arguments and just win the debate, no matter if the person will believe or not, which is actually the point of preaching and teaching others about Mashiach, for others to be saved, not for us to win an argument. We know that Mashiach is the truth. If somebody doesn't want to accept it, that's their issue. We know that should be enough. So it shouldn't matter if they laugh at us, if they mock what we believe, if they call us crazy, because we know that they don't know, they don't understand. And we know that they are being influenced by their flesh, by the idols they worship, by the false doctrine, by their teachers. So they have a lot of things against them, and they don't know it, they don't see it, because they don't have ears to hear nor eyes to see. So we need to remind them of this, remind everybody who is a believer. Earnestly witnessing before the sovereign. We need to earnestly witness of Mashiach, right? Witnessing before the sovereign. I'm sorry. Yeah. Not to wage verbal battles to the overthrowing of the hearers. Not to wage verbal battles, which is useless to the overthrowing of the hearers. At the end, those verbal battles will end up being useless and could affect those who are hearing, because they wouldn't understand either. And the attitude that one may have in a verbal battle may make others actually go away from the teaching, if your focus is not the truth. So, which is useless to the overthrowing of the hearers. So, do your utmost to present yourself approved to Elohim, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. So, we need to do our job, the ministry that Yahweh gave us, wherever that may be. And whoever doesn't know what that is yet, just continue in the word of truth, and everything will be revealed eventually. Everything will just fall into place. Yahweh will lead you through what you should be doing. So do your utmost. So this is what we need to do on our side. He is the one who will make sure we end up fulfilling his purpose. What we need to do is to make sure to present ourselves approved to Elohim by learning the scriptures and act according to what we are learning from them. So do your utmost to present yourself approved to Yahweh, a worker who does not need to be ashamed. So we should do everything in the best way we can. Rightly handling the word of truth. This is something that most don't do. Rightly handling the word of truth. Most people don't even know the word of truth. Remember that the word of truth is the name Yahushua. I repeat, Revelation 19:13. And he inspired everything that is written. So everything that is written in the scriptures is true. So they are all words of truth. And therefore we need to handle every one of those words correctly, meaning in context, knowing how to interpret the scriptures by what the scriptures say and not by what a man says. And we need to also read the scriptures with the Ruach HaKodesh, which comes in the name of Mashiach, John 14:26, because the Ruach is the one that will help us to rightly handle the word of truth. So when we speak to somebody, we are able to use the verses from scriptures, the chapters, the parts that are needed to convince someone of the truth. But like I said, a lot of people, mainly in Christianity, don't know the scriptures and don't know how to defend what they believe. So sadly, that means they don't actually know what they believe. So that would mean that they don't actually have faith. They have a belief in belief, but they don't know the scriptures. And if you ask them, some of them will realize they don't know much. Some will say, go talk to my pastor. Some will get angry, upset because they're not able to defend themselves. They will say you're crazy because you're reading too much scriptures, etc., etc. So we need, if we are going to work for Yahweh, we need to be good workers who do not need to be ashamed. So in that case, we study scriptures so that when somebody asks anything from us, we're able to give them an answer, right? If we're working in a place where there's customer service, we need to have the answers for the customers. So if we're working for Yahweh, we need to have the answers for those who actually want to enter the kingdom. So rightly handling the word of truth. But keep away from profane, empty babblings, for they go on to more wickedness. Right? Like we see also in Proverbs and other writings regarding the wise and the fool, and how the fool, if he remains quiet, may pass as a wise person. But when a fool opens his or her mouth, he shows everyone that he's a fool with empty babblings. So we need to make sure we do not have empty conversations, empty words. And if somebody wants an empty conversation, then also we should be able to go away from those conversations, or at least be, well, in a nice way, tell the person that you're not interested. Keep away from profane, empty babblings, for they go on to more wickedness, right? When we were in the world, there were many of our friends who would only talk about the profane. And that would lead people or us to do that which is profane. Obviously, whatever you think, you speak about, and whatever you speak about will make others think about. And if you make others think about whatever, then they may end up doing that which you were speaking about. So you should always speak about something that will build up the person, that will help, that will edify, right? Instead of that which will destroy. But keep away from profane, empty babblings, for they go on to more wickedness. And also, this happens as well in religion, of course, a lot of profane talk or empty babblings, right? There are a lot of so-called teachers who do a lot of empty babblings. For they go on to more wickedness, and their word shall eat its way like gangrene, and their word shall eat its way like gangrene. Humanaios and Philetos are of this sort. You see how Paul is clear, and he actually gives names, right? It's not like he said, there are some who are like that, but I don't want to talk bad about them. It's not about that. It's about the well of the congregation, so they need to know. So he actually says names. These two people, they are like this, right? And let me see these two names. Obviously, we can see human right here. Like humans, sadly, are this way, but let me check in the concordance. Humenaios. So this name, Humenaios. Humenaios means belonging to marriage. Well, see several ways right here. And then Philetos, beloved. Phileo, right, which is love in Greek. So, beloved and belonging to marriage. The meaning of those two names. But keep away from profane, empty babblings. As we saw, Philetos means beloved, just like this world loves empty babblings and the profane. And then it says, for they go on to more wickedness, and their word shall eat its way like gangrene. Humanaios and Philetos are of this sort, who have missed the goal concerning the truth, saying that the resurrection has already taken place and overthrow the belief of some. So you see how he was speaking about people who claim to believe in the Mashiach, when he said, keep away from profane and empty babblings, like these two. The one belonging to marriage and the beloved. So obviously both names have a positive meaning. However, as everything in this world has a duality, we can see a negative, like I mentioned, Philetos, beloved, that which is beloved by the world, right? Or he who is beloved by the world. And belonging to marriage, well, as we know, a marriage without Yahweh is pretty much a little bit of a hell, right? If you have Yahweh, is a little bit of a paradise, a portion of paradise. If you don't have Yahweh in a marriage, is a portion of hell. So belonging to marriage. Now, it's also interesting that in Hebrew, normally a word for husband would be Baal, right? Which is translated as Lord. Baal means owner. Remember that scripture says that the body of the wife belongs to the husband and the body of the husband belongs to the wife. So that will be part of the reason why the husband will be called owner, right? Or Baal. And I say that because the name means belonging to marriage. So there could be a connection with Baal there. And Philetos with the false Messiah, for he is beloved by the world. So like the false prophet and the false Messiah. and their word shall eat its way like gangrene, which will happen with the false prophet and the false Messiah, which are filled of profane things like idols and empty babblings like their teachings. Then he says regarding these two people who have missed the goal concerning the truth, right? So they missed it. They tried, but they missed it because they either understood something else or decided to deceive people. But Paul is being clear about this doctrine that came about in their time. And remember that there are doctrines nowadays similar to this, or some that would fall in the same category of empty babblings and profane talk. So who have missed the goal concerning the truth, saying that the resurrection has already taken place. Remember that there were 500 who resurrected. 500 witnesses, but there were a lot of graves that were open and people came out of the graves when Mashiach resurrected. Then they went back. All points to them going back. And perhaps that that which was actually a confirmation that there will be a resurrection, that was a model of what will happen. It was a representation of a microcosm, right, of what will eventually happen when the 144,000 are transformed and then the many are resurrected. So it is possible that because of those people that were resurrected to give that sign and show a confirmation of Mashiach being resurrected, it is possible that some started to teach that that was the resurrection, that the actual resurrection had already happened, so they could stop thinking about it or expecting it. Just like there are many who believe that the book of Revelation already happened. A lot of people believe the book of Revelation already happened, so nobody should be teaching about it or whatever. And they have missed the goal concerning the truth, saying that the resurrection has already taken place and overthrow the belief of some. So through that teaching, which was a lie, just like many teachings are a lie nowadays, a lot of people are taken away from the true belief. And it's very sad. Now, we are living in the apostasy, so most people are born in the false belief and they are trying to find the true one. At least some of them are trying to find the true belief. But even having come to the true belief, sometimes because of all the lies around and the many things in the internet and everything else, some decide to go away from the belief and to believe something else. For whatever reason they think is, whatever reason they think is enough reason. So, however, verse 19, however, the solid foundation of Yahweh stands firm. So even though they have their false doctrines and they make many go away from their belief through those false doctrines, even so, the solid foundation of Yahweh stands firm. Having this seal, Yahweh knows those who are his. Numbers 16:5. Let's go and check it out real quick. And spoke Korach and all his company, saying, tomorrow morning Yahweh shall make known who is his and who is set apart, and bring him near to him, and let him bring near to him the one whom he chooses. So you see how it was Korach who said this, right? A rebel. But he said something that ended up being right, because he was not chosen, right? He entered Sheol alive, to represent the fact that the false prophet and the beast will be thrown into the lake of fire alive. So spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, tomorrow morning Yahweh shall make known in his tomorrow morning Yahweh shall make known who is his and who is set apart, and bring him near to him, and let him bring near to him the one whom he chooses. That's right. So as Paulus was saying, however, the solid foundation of Yahweh stands firm, having this seal. Yahweh knows those who are his. This is beautiful. Obviously, it should be, well, obvious, right? To those who believe in Yahweh and know that he is all knowable, right? So he knows those who are his. But since we are in the flesh and we don't know everything, sometimes we forget that. And I say that also as a pastor who struggles with the fact that I want every single person who I meet, right? And when it comes to these teachings and scriptures and those who come to the congregation or those who I meet through the internet, I would love every single one to receive salvation, not to go through death, to understand everything, etc., to be blessed, to be healed, if is the case, whatever, everything. I hope for that. I wish for that. I pray for that. But in the 10 years and a little bit more now that I have had preaching, well, at least having a congregation, because actually I preached before that, but having a congregation, because it's different, because when I would preach in a congregation, I would just give the teaching and then go away, right? But since Yahweh started our congregation, now they are sheep who are entrusted to me as a leader, so I feel the responsibility, right? So when a person goes away, decides not to believe, whatever it may be, I feel very bad and sad, and think a lot of things and about what I should have done different or whatever. But many times Yahweh has told me this or things similar to this. Yahweh knows those who are his, and that's it. Those are the ones who will be saved. It doesn't matter who comes through. What matters is who remains, who stands firm. And as it was said to Timothy as well, to endure, right? Those who endure, those who persevere, those who stand firm. So Yahweh knows those who are his. And let everyone who names the name of the Messiah turn away from unrighteousness. So how can they come up with a belief in which they can do whatever they want because they think that they received the grace through their belief and therefore sin doesn't exist anymore? It makes no sense. That shows that they do not handle the word of truth correctly. Let everyone who names the name of the Messiah. So imagine how important it is to name the name of the Messiah, to know it and to name it. And once you do it, you must be careful to remain set apart. Let everyone who names the name of the Messiah turn away from unrighteousness. But in a large house, there are not only vessels of gold and silver. So we need to remember this, that is being said in this verse. And I was thinking about this earlier, because it is hard sometimes to go out into the world and find yourself with people who are not believers at all, who are mean, who are wicked, who are whatever. And they trying to take away your shalom, right? They try to take away your good energy and whatever. And sometimes it's hard to deal with that. But then you should realize, like I did earlier, that what can you expect? We are in a world in which we're just a few, and the rest of the world thinks differently. And therefore, they will do whatever they want or can to get what they want, right? Not thinking about others, stuff like that. So, as it says here, but in a large house, there are not only vessels of gold and silver. We would expect to only find gold and silver in the world. And I mean people that are gold or silver, that are few or the many, because the many are closer, right? And they have a belief and they try to do good and fulfill the commandments, even though they don't have the name. but they do want to have fulfill the commandments. But the world is not filled with vessels of gold and silver. It says, but in a large house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some unto value and some unto no value. So there are people who have no value in that sense because they never fill themselves with spiritual value, right? They only fill themselves with sin, with hatred, with wickedness. So that takes away all value from whatever soul is within. They actually take away value from others. So we need to remember that we are in a large house and every person is a vessel, and we cannot expect to only find vessels of gold. We will find all kinds of people, and some of them will not add value to your life nor to the world. So we must be careful not to drink from those vessels. Remember that Yahweh made the vessels for I just forgot the word. Well, I'm trying to remember how it was written in the scriptures, but the vessels of wrath, pretty much. I think it might be translated a bit different, but that's what it means. The vessels of wrath. We were not created for the wrath. We were made as vessels, but not for the wrath. As a person who makes certain vessels for different purposes and decides to make some just to break them because of how it feels. Or just some vessels who are not, didn't come out right. In the sense of Yahweh, obviously he does everything right. But my point is, when I said didn't come out right, in the sense that once they were given free will, they made the wrong choices that ended up turning them into vessels that will be destroyed in the day of wrath. Like when a person is about to change houses, right? If you're about to like, let's say you buy a new house, a mansion, and you're about to move, right? It would be like us moving from this reality, which is like a tent, to a mansion, which is eternity. And then you decide, okay, so I need to move everything there. But when you start taking everything out to move it, you realize there's a bunch of things that you shouldn't take to the new house because they are pretty much garbage that you were keeping. So you realize there are certain vessels you shouldn't take with you. So you end up breaking them before you go to the next house. So that's pretty much what Yahweh is doing. He's about to take us to the next house. And when he starts checking for everything that he's going to take away, he'll realize there's a lot of things that he needs to destroy before going to the next world. And those are the vessels of wrath. So if then anyone cleanses himself from these matters, he shall be a vessel unto value. You see, if you yourself clean yourself, like Mashiach said regarding the Pharisees, they would only clean the outside of the vessel. They were filled with death, with wickedness, no matter how good they looked on the outside. We need to make sure we clean the inside. If then anyone cleanses himself from these matters, he shall be a vessel unto value, having been set apart, of good use to the sovereign, having been prepared for every good work. Right? If you go to the kitchen, obviously you're going to look for a clean vessel to use, right? If you see all the dirty dishes, you won't use those. And even more if the dishes have the ability to wash themselves like humans have, right? So every person through following the Messiah should cleanse himself or herself of every wickedness so that the Almighty can use them and will use them, for they are clean to be used. So if then anyone cleanses himself from these matters, he shall be a vessel unto value, having been set apart of good use to the sovereign, having been prepared for every good work. And flee from the lusts of youth. And flee from the lusts of youth. but pursue righteousness, believe, love, peace, shalom, with those calling on the sovereign out of a clean heart. So flee from the lusts of youth, but pursue righteousness, believe, love, shalom with those calling on the sovereign out of a clean heart. Mentions 4 things, like the 4 letters in the name that they call. The 4 letters in the name Yahweh. Yahweh, who is love, who sent Mashiach, in whom we should believe, so that we receive the peace that surpasses all understanding, and therefore obviously become righteous. Because if we are righteous, then we have peace in our heart. So pursue righteousness, believe, so do everything that is righteous, that will lead you to believe. We could say that because it is written in Romans, if you believe, then you are righteous, right? If you believe in Mashiach, you receive righteousness. But how do you come to believe in Mashiach? When Yahweh reveals him to you. And why does Yahweh reveals Mashiach to somebody? Because that person has cleansed himself to become a good vessel with value. So by a person cleaning himself, he is becoming righteous, meaning he starts to do righteous things. He starts to fulfill the commandments. So Yahweh sees value in that person, so he brings the belief to that person, the belief in Mashiach. And once that person receives the belief, he has the ruach of Yahweh, which is love, so that he can love the father and their neighbor as themselves, and therefore become more righteous, in order to finally have the shalom that surpasses all understanding because of that righteousness. So they are able to have shalom with those calling on the sovereign out of a clean heart. But refuse foolish and stupid questions. I love this because remember how everybody says that there are no stupid questions? It is written, there are. Right? And the Pharisees made a lot of them. Mainly because they did not want to know. They just wanted to try Mashiach. They just wanted to set a trap. And remember also, Shlomo says there's also a stupid question, right? When you say, why were the days of all better than these days? So, but refuse foolish and stupid questions, knowing that they breed quarrels. Right. So when you realize that they're asking a question just to start a fight, then avoid it, refuse it. And a servant of the sovereign should not quarrel, but I'm sorry. And a servant of the sovereign should not quarrel, but be gentle towards all. Important and sometimes hard, mainly the all, right? Because it is simple to be gentle with those who are gentle. But with those vessels that have no value, it will be hard. But that's when the test begins, right? When it's hard, when you find it hard to be gentle because they are not being gentle to you. So that's a test, no doubt. One can be firm, one can be straight, like in the words that you say, but always keep it gentle as possible. So, and I even say that because I do have an issue in the sense that even when I try to be gentle to others, I don't seem that gentle. Like in my mind, I'm being gentle. In my heart, I'm being gentle. But then I have realized in the past that people don't perceive it that way. So it's like I gotta like try double hard, because when I try, it's not enough. So yeah, I say it, and that's why I'm saying it to myself right now. And I repeat, I mean, in my mind, I'm being gentle, and that's the good thing, that Yahweh knows my heart. But I need to make sure also that people get it. I need to make sure, because that's the point of being gentle to others, that they feel that gentleness. So, and a servant of the sovereign should not quarrel, but be gentle towards all, able to teach, patient when wronged. And it continues, but I'll just stay here for a moment. So as I was saying, a servant of the sovereign should not quarrel, but be gentle towards all. We, like I said earlier, because of the fact that we know what we know, that we have received such a revelation, we shouldn't try and quarrel with everybody who doesn't have it, because we should understand that if they don't have it, is because Yahweh has not revealed it to them. And if Yahweh has not revealed it to them, one of two: either he's sending us to reveal it to them, and therefore we must be gentle when doing it, or they are not deserving the revelation, and therefore if you do so, which you can, would be as a testimony against them if they don't receive it. But you still got to do it in a gentle way, even if they reject it and hate you and persecute you and offend you and whatever. So that first, we must be gentle towards all. Able to teach, very important. There are 5 ministries. One is teacher, but everybody should ask the Father for help in order to teach whoever may come. Like, not necessarily to be a teacher of a congregation, of a group, but to be able to teach what you believe to whoever may speak to you and ask regarding your belief. So look for, like, pray to the Father for the ability to teach. Patient when wronged. That's important, because we all must be patient. But like I was saying, it is easy to be patient when everything is working out. But when you're being wronged, then that's when it becomes hard. That's the test. And that's when we need to show patience. Yes. So patient when wronged. We need to understand and remember that Yahweh knows. If we were wronged, he knows. And if other people don't, we need to remain patient that they will eventually know, if Yahweh reveals it to them, if the truth comes out, or even in the kingdom, right? Because I'm pretty sure in the kingdom, we're going to find a lot of people that most people don't expect to see in the kingdom. And also, a lot of people will be looking for a lot of people that won't be in the kingdom, and they expect to be there, right? Because of what this world exalts, what this world loves. So, yeah, it's going to be very different than what people expect. So be patient. Eventually, it will be clear. In meekness, instructing those who are in opposition. In meekness, instructing those who are in opposition. Right? So we need to be meek. Remember that. In order to instruct those who are in opposition, but not quarrel, right? Remember that, even though they are in opposition. So we should always, like, remember that the priority is to help others to know the Father and the Son, or the Father through the Son, and for them to be saved. It's not to win the argument. If they don't accept it, that is their right, their prerogative, right? They can not accept it and then deal with the consequences later. We are doing our job by presenting the truth to them with meekness, right? Being gentle. And if we do that, they have no excuse. But if we don't do it in a gentle way and with meekness, they will have an excuse. They can tell the Father, oh no, but you heard how he talked to me? You remember how he was telling me that? Of course I was going to reject it. He was being all mean and telling me I was going to hell and whatever, right? So we need to be gentle and use meekness so that they cannot say anything regarding what we told them. All right. So in meekness, instructing those who are in opposition. Let's somehow Yahweh gives them repentance unto a thorough knowledge of the truth, right? As I was saying, that should be our focus. We don't know. Yahweh may do so. Yahweh may reveal himself to them, even if we think because of appearances, because of the past of the person, because of whatever, even if we think that they won't believe, Yahweh may do so and, well, may reveal himself to them. So, in meekness, instructing those who are in opposition, lest somehow Yahweh gives them repentance unto a thorough knowledge of the truth. So if they are in opposition, we should bring with gentleness and meekness the truth to them. Yahweh may reveal himself to them. If he doesn't, then they will be punished for it, in the sense that they have a witness against them because they rejected the truth when it was brought to them with all meekness and gentleness. So either way, you're doing your job. If you preach, if you teach the truth and they don't accept it, you did your job. If you teach the truth and they accept it, you did your job, and that person will be saved, and that is something to celebrate, right? Of course. But you're doing your job when you do it with meekness and in a gentle way. Let somehow Yahweh gives them repentance unto a thorough knowledge of the truth. And they come to their senses out of the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his desire, right? Because that's what is happening. That's why they reject the truth, because they are not in their senses. They have to come to their senses by the power of Yahweh in order to come out of the snare of the devil, because they are already trapped by him. So that's why they do his desire. So that means that if we get a hold of the Messiah, if we subject ourselves to him, then he will help us to do his desire, just like those who get attached to the enemy end up doing his. All right, so that's how the chapter ends.